Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Wild Digest, or should I say the Wild Space Digest, because this is Rocket Summer. And as I had mentioned in a previous TBR, my whole intention with July was to try to read, at the very least, one novel per week for Rocket Summer. Now, technically, July has like 4.5 weeks. It started on Wednesday of last week, and so I slotted in a fifth book in the hope that I would be able to knock 5 out by the end of the month. I mean, that doesn't seem too difficult, right? So the very first book I was going to cover is the Maracot Deep by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and this is the edition that I picked up and read. And we're going to talk a little bit about this one now. One other little side note, which was kind of fun, is that last week, while I was reading this book, my wife and I went up to Morro Bay in California, and we went off whale watching. So we actually got to see the usual humpbacks and sea lions and a few other things, but they took us 8 miles out on the water, and we saw blue whales. And if you've never seen blue whales in person before, it will change your life. They are so massive. They're like 100 feet long, largest mammals on Earth, right? And you can see, some of you could probably tell, I got pretty badly sunburned being out on that water for 3 hours. So, but anyway, it was a perfectly appropriate adventure to accommodate my reading of this book about exploring the ocean. So let's go into this book a little bit. It is a fun read. With a couple of caveats, and I'm not going to do a straight ahead review of this. This is going to be more of an overview, and then I'll sort of toss out some personal feelings about it as I go along. But it's a good little read, and it was certainly a fun way to start off Rocket Summer. So this book was originally published in 1927 as a serial in the Saturday Evening Post. It was also in the Strand magazine, I believe, during that same time. So it had American and UK publication from the outset. And it was originally published, the first section of it, which is like the first 2/3 of the book, was published in 27 through October 27 through February of 28. And then there was a sequel of sorts written that came out I think in 1929. I don't know what the exact publication date on that one. And that was The Lord of the Dark Face. Both of these things appear in this now collected novel. And you can get there's a whole variety of editions that have been published since that time. And because it's in the public domain, you can also go and find it online and read it for absolutely free. So I will be sure to link to at least one of the places you can go and read it, and hopefully enjoy it as much as I did. So let's go over bits and pieces of the plot. So the adventure, it's about 3 characters: Professor Maracot, Bill Scanlon, who's like this American sort of a hot-headed engineer mechanic, and Cyrus Heady.
That's Headley!
I mean Cyrus Headley, who is a zoologist. So the 3 of these guys are put together. I mean, Maracot builds this little team, and the intention is to take a bathysphere. I don't remember what the actual name was. I don't know if he gives it a name, but to take this bathysphere and go down to the deepest parts of the Atlantic, off the coast of Africa. I think it's near the Canary Islands. And they're going to take this bathysphere down to the bottom and try to survey the area and spot new life that hasn't been recorded. And, just it's sort of a survey of the bottom of the ocean bed. Maracot, of course, he believes that they're going to go to the deepest part. And basically they head out. They descend down into the depths, and they're observing fish and other life forms from the windows of their luxurious bathysphere, or bathyscape. I always forget which one is which. And it is described in sort of steampunk sensibilities, where there's like pipes inside and cushions that they can sit on, and electric lighting and all this kind of thing. And they have a backup oxygen supply and also a hose that goes up, and they're tethered to a ship that's on the surface, and able to communicate with the captain of that ship so that they can shift them around or move them in different places during their exploration. So while they go down there and they reach this the edge of this deep pit. We don't know if it's a volcanic crater or whatever, but they're at the edge of this thing, and unfortunately, the tether to the ship is severed, and they plummet into the depths, seemingly to their doom. There's a great line when this happens where Maracot says something along the lines of, "We are dead," or "We are all dead," and they're sort of resigning themselves to the fact that they are not going to make it out of this situation alive, which wouldn't make for much of a story if that was the case. So, and mind you, I don't know if I've mentioned this already, Cyrus, who is our protagonist, Maracot is described as, he's the major character, but our protagonist is Cyrus. He's also our narrator, so he's telling his whole story about what has happened to them at the bottom of the sea. And you obviously understand that in order for the story to be conveyed to the surface world, they have to survive this adventure. So, go with that conceit. So they arrive at the bottom of the ocean, and they see strange life down there. They see luminescence, which is coming off of the decaying dead creatures that lie at the bottom of the sea. And as I said, they're resigning themselves to their doom. I think they have a 24-hour oxygen supply. And as they are down there, suddenly they see a face at the window, and they are rescued. A team comes out and brings these special suits to them and extracts them from their bathysphere and takes them to their subaquatic, suboceanic, subterranean world, which is basically Atlantis. And what transpires after that there's a series of little adventures, and we learn a little bit about this hidden world, this secret lost world. And this definitely is lost world fiction, I think, or lost race fiction. I forget what they call it when it comes to describing sort of those older pulp ones. I think it's lost race. And there's some neat things that I really like that are established in this world. For example, they are unable to communicate with each other. It's clear that language is definitely a barrier, that the survivors who've been living at the bottom of the ocean have come up with their own language. It's developed over the years, over probably thousands of years. And not until they meet this high priest who speaks with an ancient form of Greek are they able to communicate in any way, shape, or form. And at that point, it even proves difficult for Professor Maracot, who knows Greek, but he's only able to understand little bits and pieces. And what Doyle does, which is very, very cool, is he introduces this thought projector. They have this sort of room, almost like a theater, and they can sit down and project their thoughts onto a large screen, so everybody can see visually in their backgrounds, their stories, their histories, and it's all projected in the form of a motion picture, basically, which is pretty cool. Kind of way ahead of its time for 1927, so to speak. I mean, we obviously had the moving pictures, so at that point he was just extrapolating upon that. But I think he even describes it as being in vivid color images. Through this, our heroes are not only able to show the survivors, the Atlanteans rather, what our world is like and what they have been through. The Atlanteans are able to tell our heroes what happened to their world. So we get reconstructed memories and histories talking about when this incredible cataclysm befell their society thousands of years in our past, which is pretty cool. There are some other things you learn about the various castes in this world, which is kind of problematic, but because there's like slaves and things like that. But you put it in the context of this civilization's thousands of years old. But you also find out that this civilization has split the frickin' atom. So they're really, really advanced in some ways and a little primitive in other ways. Eventually, Maracot and his team decide that they want to return to the surface, and Maracot comes up with this idea for floating letters in these glass globules up to the surface. And because they are essentially on along a major trade route, they figure at least one of them will be spotted. And it is. They establish communication between the surface world, and our heroes are rescued. And Cyrus actually brings this girl Mona with him, who is, I think she's the daughter of the sort of main high priest that they meet up with. And they're rescued. And this is like 2/3 of the way through the book. And at that point, you just have to kind of assume, well, and they go off and live happily ever after, and Maracot probably, presents all this stuff to his university, and whatever happens, and Mona and Cyrus go off and live happily ever after. But the latter story comes in, or the sequel, so to speak, which was The Lord of the Dark Face. And at this point, it's a little jarring, because Cyrus then says, well, you now know all of the adventures that happened while we were down there, but there were some other things that happened. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about those. And the stories begin kind of like, another adventure, another tale told within Atlantis, and it fits in with the storyline just fine. But then things go a little wonky, because we're introduced to this dark temple that is at the bottom of the ocean, and a place where nobody in Atlantis goes because they live in fear of it or whatever. And our team decides, hey, you know what, we're gonna sneak off and we're gonna go investigate this strange place. So they do that. They head out, and they enter this weird temple, and they find strange writing, and they find unusual creatures like sort of hybrid. Well, they're definitely monsters, but there's things that have poison or venom. Some look like earthly creatures, others look like something twisted. I think there's even tentacled oddities, etc., etc. And they come face to face with this towering figure who claims to be Baal Sipa, aka the Lord of the Dark Face, as I mentioned in the title. And he then, first of all, he's not in any kind of protective suit, but they can hear his voice. He seems to be breathing fine. He seems to be able to communicate with them with no problem at all. And we learn that he is like 12,000 years old. He's been around since the very, very beginning, or, well, certainly the fall of Atlantis. And he has been interacting with the world for a long, long time. That's why he now knows like every language that's spoken on Earth. And I'm going to read this little section where he talks a little bit about himself, and let me just go through it. So he says,
I am the master of the mob. Where evil has been planned, there have I ever been. I was with the Huns when they laid half Europe in ruins. I was with the Saracens when under the name of religion they put to the sword all who gainsayed them. I was out on Bartholomew's night. I lay behind the slave trade. It was my whisper which burned 10,000 old crones whom the fools called witches. I was the tall, dark man who led the mob in Paris when the streets swam in blood.
Pleased to meet you. Hope you guessed my name. Yeah, it feels like Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones. So you kind of get this impression that this guy that they're meeting right now is the devil, quote unquote, right? So that's already, you're like, what is going on? And it's got, it rings of Lovecraftian aspects, this sort of ancient evil, tall, described as dark, can speak multiple languages, and it's out to seek revenge against the people of Atlantis. And you begin to find out that there was a character named Warda who was responsible for saving the people of Atlantis in the beginning, and Warda and Baal Sipa, aka the Lord of the Dark Face, were bitter enemies. And so now he wants to destroy Atlantis, and because our heroes entered his domain, he's now linked to it and feels compelled to carry out this vengeful act, right? Well, things get even weirder because then, and spoiler alert, big spoiler alert, because this wraps up the novel, just go ahead and skip to this time code if you want, because I'm going to just tell you what happens because it's ludicrous. So they go back to Atlantis, our heroes go back to Atlantis, and Balsepa shows up, and Maracot, Professor Maracot, suddenly comes up with this way to defeat this bad guy, and it's like a channeling thing. I don't know what happens. It's all spiritualism to me. He actually becomes sort of possessed by the spirit of Warda, who is strong enough to stand up to Balsepa and declare his real name and all this kind of stuff and tell him that he has no power here, and Balsepa is destroyed. Professor Maracot and the other heroes are celebrated in Atlantis, and that's pretty much where that storyline ends. And we know this story took place before our heroes were rescued. So then at the very end of the book, we jump ahead, and Cyrus essentially says, you know, everything's great. Everything's fine now. And, you know, sometimes we talk about maybe going back to Atlantis. The end. So this was Doyle's last novel, so there were never any more stories set in Atlantis, and obviously we never got to see if those characters went back there. I don't know, because it's in the public domain, you could always write something. Hint, hint. It's a fun little read. I enjoyed the first 2/3 of the book immensely. I really thought the world building was pretty cool, and I liked that take on Atlantis that Doyle did. When it goes into that interacting with this dark-faced, ancient 12,000-year-old evil guy, it just was a little too odd for me. It didn't seem. It almost seemed like a completely incompatible, separate story. Like, I don't know why he decided to make it an Atlantis story. It could have been something completely different, but that's fine. It is what it is. So the Maracot Deep. So yeah, I would recommend it. I won't give it ratings or anything like that, but if you want to read something of Doyle's, I mean, I'm a huge Doyle fan. I read all the Sherlock Holmes stuff. The stuff I have not read are the Professor Challenger stories, and I know there's a few of those. And I've read some articles online where people have said that this should have been a Challenger novel. But I guess in the last Challenger story, something happens to Challenger, which kind of pushes him to the side, and so it really wouldn't have worked unless he had gone backwards into the continuity or something. So I'm not entirely sure about that. But I guess I'm going to establish a tradition now where next year, for week 1 of Rocket Summer, I will go ahead and read The Lost World, which is the first Professor Challenger novel, and we'll just sort of make a Doyle tradition of Rocket Summer week 1. We'll see how that goes. So that is the Maracot Deep, a fun little read. Like I said, it's slim. This particular edition is only about 160 pages. So if you want to check it out, go for it. And like I said, you can find freebies, free versions online, and I'll link below to where you can track one down. Right now, for officially week 1, I'm reading Star Begotten by H.G. Wells. I've only just started this one, and it's strange so far. But it'll be interesting to see where this goes. And yeah, and then after that is going to be Donovan's Brain, as I had mentioned. We're going to go back to Atlantis with Attack from Atlantis by Lester Del Rey, a little blown out there. And then we'll wrap up with Space Barbarians by Tom Godwin for the final week of the month of July. Just heads up, last week of July, well, the last few days of July, I'm going to be heading to Indianapolis for Gen Con. I'll probably shoot some footage and stuff while I'm there. It might be kind of fun to catch up and tell you a little bit about one of the largest gaming events, tabletop gaming events in the world. And then when I get back from Gen Con, I will be rolling into Book Trek. I don't do Garb August. Nothing against it. It's just not me. Not for me. And I know some people have been doing Book Trek all summer long from June through August-ish. So I'm going to devote my August to Star Trek. So I'll be doing Book Trek in August, reading Star Trek novels. So that gets you all caught up. That's it for this particular episode. Said I was going to try to keep it fairly quick. I hope I did. And we will be back with a Star Begotten review in the next couple of days. And I do have a Flash Gordon project in the works that is going to cover Flash Gordon in print from the very beginning, January of 1934, when the strip first dropped in newspapers. So we will see how that goes, and I hope you enjoy and watch for that. That'll be coming up hopefully in the next couple of weeks. And that's it. Thank you very much for watching. Lots more Rocket Summer excitement coming up, and be sure to check out all the channels for my co-hosts for Rocket Summer. They are covering some great stuff as well. They're reading some short stories and other novels, and it's a great conversation going on across BookTube. So I will see you in the next video. Thanks again for watching. Take care. Bye.